Poplar Grove in Lafayette in West Baltimore mid-afternoon. Outside a corner store, it's a hail of bullets. Officers surround this scene just before 3:30 Wednesday to find a 12-year-old boy shot in his foot. On the ground, a teenager with multiple gunshots pronounced dead in the street. Friends identifying him as Jaheem Atkins, 16 years old.
These boys are paying in blood in a war among men, and we're failing them.
Former federal prosecutor Thiru Vignaraja calls it an execution of another teen, another child murdered in this city.
This is the daily drumbeat of violence in Baltimore. We're so accustomed to it, but there's no outrage. There have been a dozen murders within a stone's throw of that corner this year.
This corner, on just this street, under 2 miles long, Fox 45 checked. There have been 86 crimes, 3 murders since the beginning of this year. Jaheem gunned down, no doubt, in full view of a city camera.
They don't care, and they're doing it in broad daylight.
Former Baltimore Police Chief spokesman T.J. Smith says it speaks to the lawlessness with no plan to stop it. In a neighborhood where so many knew this boy, tears and anger, but no one willing to speak on camera. Smith says fear makes sense.
They're seeing someone who didn't hesitate to shoot a 16-year-old in broad daylight multiple times. That's sending a message.
He says this can't be normal.
Because it continues to happen in the same geography where it's just mainly young black boys who are getting shot and killed, no one cares. I'm sick of it. It's tiring.
Neighbors tell us that the camera that sits above that corner where this killing happened does work. Police have not said if they have any suspects in this case. Meantime, this is in Councilman John Bullock's district. We reached out to him tonight. We're still waiting to hear back.
Thank you. With just 13 days until Election Day, if you want to vote by mail, putting your ballot in a mail slot may be a risk. A new report from a U.S. Senate Oversight Committee shows Baltimore mail is getting delivered slower than this time last year. Mackenzie Frost continues our team coverage of Vote 2020. She's live in Towson explaining what the post office says it's doing to ramp up delivery and some new options some voters have to make to get their voice heard. Mackenzie?
Hey, Mary, right now in Maryland, there are over 280 different ballot boxes just like this one available. This time tomorrow, there will be 40 or more of these ballot drop boxes in Baltimore County. That could be some good news for voters who don't want to show up and cast their ballot in person, but maybe are concerned about voting by mail. More than 4 times the amount of people have already voted by mail in Maryland compared to 2016. There's still 13 days until Election Day. Voters opting to stay at home and cast their ballot, but instead of dropping the ballot in the mail, voters are dropping their ballots here in a drop box.
There's been a lot of discussion about potential delays with the Postal Service this year, so this seemed like a way to just put less strain on the system and make sure that we saw the ballots get to where they needed to be ourselves.
Those concerns seen in a new report from a U.S. Senate committee. Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, the ranking Democrat on the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, says delays in the U.S. Postal Service continue. The issue stemming from changes made by Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. After intense pressure, DeJoy changing course, suspending some operational shifts to prevent delays before the November election. The report shows on-time service for 62 of the 67 Postal Service districts fell from 91% before the July changes to 86% during the first week of October. Baltimore, one of the 5 districts with on-time delivery below 80%. Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski dropping his ballot off in a drop box.
And I voted.
Says while it's possible to get your ballot in the mail in time and still have it count, don't wait.
We encourage them to vote as soon as they possibly can. The key is to have your ballot postmarked by Election Day, but there is a cutoff point after which, even if it is postmarked, the board will not be able to count it.
In Baltimore County, 8 times more people have requested to vote by mail than in 2016. Part of the reason the county is installing more than 30 additional boxes to give voters another way to participate in the election without going to the polls. Now, the U.S. Postal Service is allowing some overtime, and it says it will not close some of the processing facilities ahead of the election. I reached out to the Baltimore District Post Office to get a comment about these delayed deliveries, but I did not hear back.
Yeah, Patrice, good morning. I think many of us, including small business owners, thought we'd be further along a recovery process by fall, but we know many small businesses really face financial hardship and still plenty of restrictions going into later on in the winter. So what does that mean for their financial relief? Well, Governor Larry Hogan announced that he'll be giving an update on financial relief for small businesses later today at his 2 o'clock press conference. Again, this is an ongoing effort to help small businesses as well. Now, these comments, though, came during a Board of Public Works meeting in which the governor and Comptroller Peter Franchot went back and forth over small business relief efforts. Franchot says his push, though, for a $500 million small business stimulus package has largely gone ignored.
And I didn't want to hijack this whole meeting, but this is super important. And a month from now, it's not going to be doable.
Well, I can assure you that's what I'm not afraid of anything. And we've been more aggressive than anybody in the country, and I have an announcement tomorrow where we're going to invest even more. So thank you very much.
Again, the governor's press conference you just heard is starting at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Fox 45 will, of course, carry it live on air and online.
A new federal grand jury indictment charges 9 people for a smuggling conspiracy at a Baltimore jail. The state and federal officials say the bribery has gone on since at least 2016.
Tonight, Fox 45 News reporter Amy Simpson says it's more than just inmates involved in the scheme.
Yeah, that indictment actually names some of the staff at the Chesapeake detention facility. 3 corrections officers paid to secure that facility, now facing criminal charges of their own.
Corrections officers paid to smuggle in cigarettes, drugs, and cell phones. That's what a federal grand jury says went on for at least 4 years at this jail in Baltimore.
The indictment details troubling levels of corruption within the CDF pretrial detention facility.
The indictment also naming 4 inmates and 2 outsiders in the scheme. In some cases, payment for contraband was made in cash or through Cash App. There's also evidence of sexual relationships between corrections officers and inmates.
Putting their greed above the safety of their detainees and the welfare of the community.
U.S. Attorney Robert Hur says prisoners locked up with a cell phone in hand can be dangerous for the community.
As prisoners can use contraband cell phones to direct criminal activity, including violence and drug trafficking, outside prison walls.
The indictment outlines how corrections officers would smuggle contraband into the facility, hiding things in their clothes and food, in some cases bypassing metal detectors altogether. A clear breakdown in protocol at this maximum security prison.
Crime is no more acceptable within the walls of any of our correctional facilities than it is on the streets of our community.
If convicted, all 9 could face up to 20 years behind bars.
Now there's about 500 inmates and nearly 200 staff at this jail here in Baltimore. When asked if more people could be involved in this scheme, I was told the investigation continues.
Hundreds of documents shredded after hours inside City Hall by a former employee of the city comptroller's office. It was an incident that raised many questions. And now the city's inspector general says a security lapse and procedural mistakes allowed it to happen.
Fox 45 News reporter Amy Simpson is live at City Hall with new information about this story. Amy?
While there's no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing, this report does highlight major mishandling of city documents as well as security lapses here at City Hall. The Inspector General calls the whole thing a perfect storm.
A former Baltimore City employee able to walk into City Hall without proper credentials and shred city documents. It happened not once, but twice in August.
In reality, protocols broke down throughout.
That Inspector General report about former Deputy Comptroller Harriet Taylor, pointing to more problems at the highest levels of city government.
Even though we're one City Hall, sometimes people are in silos.
The IG says Taylor turned in her city credentials back in April after more than 2 decades on the job. She had returned to her former workplace to clean out her office, something COVID-19 had prevented from happening sooner. But the lapses in security and protocol show there's still disorganization from the top down.
It's a very important reminder. We need to show ID. We need to realize, this is a building where we have to be very careful.
These new revelations come as longtime city comptroller Joan Pratt is weeks away from leaving office. For the last several months, Fox 45 showed how the comptroller's office approved questionable business deals with Pratt's church, how the city was charged thousands for unused phone lines, and showed that Pratt spent only 18 hours a week in her office at City Hall. Today, we asked the Inspector General if we'll ever know for sure what was shredded and thrown away.
And I actually have all the shredded documents because they're in my office.
The report says none of the shredded documents relate to the ongoing Department of Labor investigation of the comptroller's office. We knocked on the door of Taylor's Baltimore home today. Nobody answered. The Inspector General, however, says this now retired city worker is remorseful about the situation.
Now, this report raises questions about the existing security protocol here at City Hall. Those were Baltimore City Police officers at the front of the building. The police commissioner says an investigation is underway and action will be taken. Live tonight in Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. Fox 45 reached out to Comptroller Joan Pratt about the report, and she released a statement saying the Office of the Inspector General has indicated in its report that no pertinent documents were destroyed. My former deputy comptroller has high integrity and moral character. My office is in compliance with the city's policies and procedures, end quote.